All right. So thank you, Terry, for agreeing to stay on and do a little podcast on Read to Succeed. I like to do Read to Succeed because I think reading is a fantastic way to upskill yourself. And I like to talk to my guests that are readers about books that they've read. So what I like to know is what the book is, what it's about, and what was it that really resonated with you that hopefully will resonate with others. So if you want to take it away and tell me about a couple of books of that you've read that you think would be worth reading.
So I'll kind of go in reverse order. The one that I just finished reading is probably something that's near and dear to your heart, and it's called Legacy. I don't know if you've read it. It's by a man by the name of Kerr, and it's about the New Zealand national rugby team, who by all accounts is the most successful sports franchise in any sport in any country of all times.
Correct.
And I could not put it down. And I took like 4 pages of notes. And you would think that this unbelievably great sports team would hire or would bring players onto their team based on their technical ability. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know a thing about rugby at all. It's not something that I could tell you anything about. But I would think, okay, this great sports franchise is going to take players that are technically competent to be part of their team. And they don't necessarily do that. What they hire for, and this kind of blew me away, and I think it has application to anybody who's going to hire anybody, they hire for 2 main things. One is character. What kind of a person are you? And 2, humility. Understanding that you may not have all the answers, but us together as a team can figure anything out. You individually may not know the answer, but us together will figure everything out and we'll go on to be successful. And one of the things I found interesting about the book was at the end of the game or the match or whatever you call the competition, the captains stay behind. The captains stay behind and they police the locker room. They pick up the tape. They put the towels in the bins. They make sure that locker room is in as good a shape or better than when they came into it. And I thought, I remember back when I was coaching high school basketball, and I used to make my players at the end of the game, it's like, okay, all these cups and tape and all that kind of stuff. Well, okay, pick them all up and put them in the garbage can before we leave the court. And I had a referee one day come up to me and he was like, that's pretty interesting. I've never seen that before. I said, never seen what? He's like, the fact that you make your players, clean up the bench. And I said, well, they made the mess. Why would we leave that to a manager or a janitor or somebody like that to clean it up? You made the mess, you clean it up. I thought that only made sense. But for some reason, this referee thought it was something that was, I guess, special. So I don't know. But Legacy, love the book, would recommend it to anybody.
So what made you pick the book? I mean, being in Colorado, how did you even get on to knowing about the book and reading it? I mean, to be honest, I haven't read it.
I had a friend of mine actually who works with my wife and is a former Navy SEAL, and he's much younger than I am. I mean, he's in his 30s, but he's very kind, and he calls me during these 2 weeks that I'm off of treatment, for an hour or so one day, and we just talk about what's going on. And we always recommend books. We go back and forth with each other about books, and he recommended this, and I'm so glad he did, because like I said, I couldn't put it down.
So have you ever watched an All Black test? Have you ever watched the All Blacks play?
I have not.
Well, you need to find out. I'm sure you'll be able to get it somehow online in America. Watch. They're over in Europe at the moment, and they're about to play Italy next weekend, and then I think Ireland and France. Okay. But you should watch it, and then you get a bit more of a sense of the game. But rugby for us is an integral part of who we are. We're a small country. We were colonized by the English. Rugby was an English game. So it was brought over to New Zealand as they colonized the country. And just being, I guess, pioneers, as Americans were when they went to America, kind of being very independent and trying to make our own way in the world. And rugby just became an integral part of who we are as New Zealanders, and continues to this day to be an incredibly important part of who we are. So for us playing rugby, the significance of it is greater than what it would be for a lot of other people. And that's why, despite the odds, we have got the best record out of any rugby nation in the world. And as you said, it's the most successful team out of any sport in the world, national team. You know, England has, I'm not sure, about 1.5 million players or something like that. We have, not exactly right, but maybe 300,000, maybe 400,000 players. Your odds are well against us, but we consistently are the best team in the world. You know, we'll get beaten from time to time, but we are consistently the best. And part of it is because it's just so important to who we are as individuals. And along with that is that this whole thing of there's huge history behind the All Blacks for New Zealand, and the desire to continue the legacy. And part of that is to always remain humble. Now, I'm not sure how that all the fans are humble, but the players themselves, to remain grounded and humble at all times. And excuse the language, but it's come to be used quite often, is they have this policy of no dickheads allowed. So, which means, you know, that just to be an All Black, you can't be an idiot. If you're up yourself, they don't want you. You've got to be a grounded individual who is there to be part of the team. And I guess, like, I've witnessed, like, Americans with basketball, for instance, some of the most amazing players in the world. So individually, some of the greatest players you'd ever see. And then you put them in the one team and then they lose. And it's like the sum of the individuals, if they work collectively, is far greater than a collection of stars. And that's kind of the philosophy we work on, is that it's all about the power of bringing everyone together to succeed. You might individually have 10 out of 15 players that are the best in the world, but if they can't play together as a team, then you'll probably get beaten by a team that might only have one or two that are the best in their position in the world. So, yeah, so it's interesting. It's interesting. And for us, it's, as I say, it's a really important part of who we are as individuals. And the Maori culture, which is integrated into the All Blacks, we do a haka often before a game. That's an important part of it too, in connecting ourselves with our history, with, the development in New Zealand. But super cool. Super cool. Now, have you got any other books you want to share, or just that one in particular?
Yeah, I'll give you one that I love to read it. It's I don't know if it's 1,000 pages, but it's pretty long. It was David McCullough's book on Harry Truman, and Harry Truman was the vice president of the United States during most of World War II, and he was basically put on the ticket with Roosevelt. I mean, Roosevelt was, you know, the main player. He was put on the ticket to, you know, kind of win certain states, but he was never a guy who was ever going to do anything. When he was in business, he was a haberdasher, you know, a clothing salesman. He failed at that. He failed at all kinds of things. Even when he became president, and so supposedly the way the story goes is he's sitting in the basement of the Senate in the United States, and he's playing cards with a bunch of senators when he finds out that Roosevelt unexpectedly has died. And all of a sudden, Harry Truman is thrust onto the center stage as the person who now will finish or carry out the rest of World War II in the Pacific. And to the point where his wife wouldn't even live in the White House with him. They were from Missouri, which is a state in the United States, and she would go back and live in Missouri quite a bit. So here's this guy who's president of the United States. His family won't even be with him, but he had the choice to drop the 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end the war in the Pacific. And he made the decision to do that because he reasoned that too many Americans would be killed if the war was prolonged. And by dropping these bombs, hopefully he could bring Japan to the bargaining table, and that's what happened. Yeah,
one heck of a decision to have had to make. But due to the nature of the way the Japanese fought, I think it was the right decision, because they would not have given up. They would have fought to the bitter end, and a lot more of them would have died, along with a lot more Americans in that as well too. So, but a challenging situation to have been in.
Yeah, great book. I think anything that David McCullough writes, he wrote another book about John Adams, who was second president of the United States, and was a guy who the Boston Massacre here in the United States was where several British officers were killed, and Adams represented the people who did the killing, and he figured his political career was over, that was it. But he felt it was the right thing to do to represent these colonists, and that was also, I love that book as well. But anything I think David McCullough writes, it has been a great book. It's been a great read for me.
And I think, with some of these historical books, people might be quick to dismiss them and say, well, that was from a long time ago, not really relevant now. But I don't know about you, but for me, though, there's a lot of messages often in those books that are just as relevant today as they were back then as well.
Oh, totally. Totally. I mean, there's that old saying about, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it, so I think it's important to learn from those decisions those people made. Times were different. Absolutely. But, again, going back to the legacy book, to the All Blacks, if you hire for character, if you are a person of good character, if you're humble, you're going to be able to do a whole lot of things in life. And you're also going to be able to be a good leader by having people, emulate the way you live your life.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. Well, thank you very much, Terry, for sharing that with us. I really appreciate it. Hopefully that's inspired some people to read those two suggested books. And as I say, I haven't even read the first one, The Legacy, so I better get out there and read that one shortly. And but it's great to see it's also being shared around the world, and that, way over there in Colorado, and you could actually be reading about our rugby team. So that's super cool.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and take care. And as I said, I'm keen to watch your progress and you continue on with your challenges and continuing to conquer them as they come up. So well done to you.
Thank you very much. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.